Hi, family. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Gold Corner. I just wanted to say thank you so much for your continued love and support. My name is Joel Ojeda. I'm also known as a Bearded Ref, and I created the Gold Corner. First of all, I created it in memory of my 2-year-old daughter, Mia, who passed away in 2018 from neuroblastoma. And I also wanted to create this channel so we can have a platform where us as parents, the ones that have gone through it, the ones currently going through it, and even the parents with children that have beat it and survivors themselves, which we've had the stories here. I just wanted to create this platform where people can really see the reality of what childhood cancer is. We talk about 4%, and we'll probably get a little bit more into the story here of what we say when we are posting, when we are hashtagging that more than 4%. We'll probably get into that here a little bit, but thank you so much for joining us for this week. This is the Gold Corner. We are a broken family, but we're broken together. Let's do this.
And now it's time for the main event. This is the moment you have all been waiting for. In memory of Mia Ojeda. Dedicated to all the brave little warriors that have fought and the ones that are currently fighting childhood cancer. For the thousands watching around the world, fighting out of the Gold Corner, it's time!
This week we have another amazing story. I had the opportunity to meet our next guest, and Ashley Silva. She's joining us from Los Baños, California, and we actually ran into each other in social media. I followed her warrior daughter story. She also knows about my story, and we just connected and we've messaged back and forth. And we have her here today, and I am just excited. She's going to be telling us the story of Warrior Katalayah, which I think is a beautiful name, and she actually told me where she got that name from. But Ashley, I wanted to say welcome and wanted to say thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of the Gold Corner. I know that we spoke a couple of months ago, and you weren't ready just yet to share the story, but I know that now you're in a better place, and I've seen the videos that you've posted, and you're ready to speak. You're ready to be an advocate because of what our children have had to go through. So Ashley, welcome to the Gold Corner. We can't wait to hear your warrior story, and the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you for having me and creating this platform for us, our community of cancer fighting parents, to be able to talk more about the awareness and what our kids are actually going through. So I definitely thank you and commend you for that. So our daughter Katalayah, she was diagnosed May 13th, 2019, at 16 months old. April End of April, around Easter 2019, we started noticing blood clots in her diaper and some blood in the diaper. Didn't really know what was going on. So we took her to our local, it's a clinic, but it was on a weekend, of course. So we didn't see our regular pediatrician, but we went in there, didn't quite know what was going on, put her on some antibiotic. We followed up next with our pediatrician during the week, and he said, finish out this antibiotic, see what happens. After a week of doing the antibiotic, the symptoms came back of the blood in the urine, and he didn't really know what was going on. So right away, he referred us to a pediatric urologist at a local children's hospital about an hour away from us. Took us about 3 weeks, unfortunately, to get into that specialist. And the urine just kept getting worse and darker. She was never complaining of pain, always still acting herself. And I called the doctor and I said, they said they can't get me in for 3 weeks. It's getting worse. What should I do? He said, you know what, take her to the emergency room up there. We went up there, and they did a catheter sample on her, and it was so dark. And the nurse said, I can almost bet this is kidney infection. And I said, okay, well, then the doctor comes, and he says it wasn't that, because she didn't have fever. So he sent her back home on some more antibiotic. And at that time, I told my husband too, I said, you know what, I should have asked for an ultrasound or some kind of imaging. But I said, well, he gave me this antibiotic, right? Next week, we have the appointment actually with the specialist. So we went, they called us before the appointment with the specialist, and they said, we scheduled her an ultrasound. We want you to go get the ultrasound done before the appointment. So we said, okay. So that was May 13th. And we went, and ultrasound tech is, doing his thing. And he kept asking a lot of questions. Nothing like too like bearing into too much privacy issues or anything, but he just kept asking questions. And he said, you guys were in the ER last week. And I said, yeah. And he said, they didn't do any kind of like ultrasound imaging. I said, no. And on the ride up there, I went with my mom, and I told her, in a sense, I hope they find something so we can correct it, but never in my mind did I think it was going to be this. And so after the appointment, I told my mom, we had like an hour in between to actually see the doctor. And I told her, I think they found something. That's why he was asking so many questions. And she said, well, we'll see. So we went to see the urologist, and right away, then she starts asking all these questions about, family history and whatnot. And then we answer all those questions, and she finally says, okay, we found this large mass on her left kidney. And I've already spoke to the oncologist. You guys are going to go directly to the hospital right now, which is right next door, because we were kind of in an outpatient clinic office. And you're going to be admitted. And she's just saying all these things. And I'm like, whoa, wait, like, what does this mean? Like, are you saying it's something like a mass? Are you talking benign, or you're talking cancerous? And she goes on to say that, most of these tumors are cancerous, and it's mostly, we see it called Wilms tumor in these kids. And I'm like, okay. And right away, when you start hearing oncology, and you just think the worst. And so we left there. We went straight to the hospital. At the time before we went, I called my husband in the car, and I told him he was at work. And I told him, something was wrong. We were being admitted. And so me and my mom, we went to the hospital, waited for my husband to come. And, my memory is really not that great, but I tell you, when it comes to her journey, everything is so vivid still. How I remember the day she was diagnosed and the day the kidney came out, I think it's just because it was such a traumatic experience. It's just like, when we remember the best days of our lives, you never forget those. So I still remember that day, May 13th, 2019, we were admitted. And I remember our first doctor, our oncologist, came in, and I can clearly still, it's so vivid, I can clearly picture everything, what she was wearing, how her hair was. That's how vivid this day is for us. And there's a team of 4 of our oncology team for her, but I always had seen her as my main oncologist because she was the first one we saw. And she always explained everything very thorough, but on a level that we could understand. And coming from some kind of medical background, I could comprehend a lot of things that she was saying. And, to the side of me, I was helping my husband at the same time understand the terminology. Because at first, he did feel a little uncomfortable to stay by himself, because he's like, well, what if something happens? And what if they start talking to me about things that I don't understand the language, So she told me, about this mass, and we're going to remove it, and the surgeon is going to come talk to me. And I'm like, okay. So they're just going to go and remove the mass. And she showed me the picture of the ultrasound it was, and it was quite large. And then she told me, tomorrow we're going to do a CT scan so I can get a better image of how large it is, and we'll go from there and whatnot. So next day we get the CT done. She comes in and she shows me the CT scan of her abdomen, and you can see on the right side her kidneys looks literally like a tiny jelly bean, and the left side is 5 times the size. It's huge. And she told me, the surgeon is going to come by and talk to you guys, and surgery is going to be tomorrow. Like, I just got admitted yesterday, and you're telling me we're going for this major surgery the next day. So all these things are going through our mind. The surgeon comes that evening to talk to us. She was amazing. She's had so much experience, she said, with, our kids, solid tumors in general. And she told me, sometimes we can do a partial nephrectomy. That's a technical term to remove a kidney. But she said, to be honest, this is too large. I have to take the whole kidney. And I said, really? And my first thought was, my kid's going on dialysis. She's 16 months old and she's going on dialysis. I did not know that people could live a perfectly healthy life with one kidney. Some people are born that way. So when she told me that, brought me some comfort. And she said, to be honest, there would not be, I would say, a surgeon in the world that could do a partial and not leave something behind. It's too large. It's too risky. So I said, okay. So she said, we're going to do that. And we're going to place the Metaport at the same time. It's going to be, give an hour for the Metaport, give another 4 hours or so to remove the kidney. But of course, I won't know how long it's going to take till we actually get in there. So May 15th came around, and it was the morning of her surgery. And she was still to this, to up to that point, she was still acting like herself, never in pain. And unfortunately, the downside of these tumors in the kidney is that they're usually not detected until, in her case, blood in the urine or blood clots, or they become so large that you can eventually start seeing one side bulging out, or kids, if it gets too large, will start complaining of pain. There's no way to detect it in blood work, because of course they ran a bunch of blood tests and an AFP for the tumor marker, nothing, it was normal. We even had she was a genetic specialist doctor who came by and evaluated her, asked us questions, because she was a little on the larger side for her age. She was born 9 pounds, 6 ounces. So she was a large baby, but my son is also a large kid too. We're just a large family. And so they did a bunch of genetic testing because I forget the syndrome that these kids could have, and they are more prone to Wilms tumor, kidney cancer. So of course we did all this testing and everything came back negative. She didn't have any of those genetic traits in her genes. So had the surgery, it actually went much smoother. We still remember the day when when you have surgery, you can only go so far before you have to hand them over, versus when she's getting her scans, I'm there every step of the way till she goes to sleep. She doesn't know that mom has left, but giving her to, the nurse was very, very hard because you didn't know what was going to happen. And you're just sitting in agony. I hope it gets all going by, and they say they're going to call, we're going to call after the port's place, where they're going to call every so often to keep you updated. And they called me maybe about an hour and a half later, and she said, oh, we're already working on the kidney. The port went much faster than she thought, so we're already here. And I said, okay. And then, the time just feels like it's dragging. And it actually ended up being a total of 4 hours. So it was much faster than she anticipated. And she came out, and she was a little discomforting. I think at first her pain wasn't managed too well. And they said, oh, you can hold her. And she just had her stomach cut open, a port place. We were kind of scared to hold her because I didn't want to cause her any pain to those areas they just cut open, but that really brought her comfort. And they told me that the option was to either give her medication with a pump, where I could, once it gave you the green light, you can give more medication, or we could do epidural. But they said sometimes with the epidural for this area, it doesn't really work that well. So we said, we'll do the pain medicine pump. So we did that. And the nurse told me when she first came out, she said, I think she's in pain. Look at her heart rate, look at the blood pressure. you should give her some pain medication. So I said, okay. She said, you know what, I don't think they kept really on top of it. So just keep pushing it. Like, you can't overdose her because it's set, for a limit. So we said, okay. And then towards the evening, she started breathing funny. And my mom noticed it and she said, is she snoring, or like, why does she sound like crackly in her chest? And I said, well, she was kind of crying. You know how sometimes then, like the mucus and stuff can build up. And so I really didn't think too much of it. And then later that evening, it just kept getting worse. And she kept taking like, I don't know how to explain it, but it was kind of like she was like really trying to catch her breath. And I called the nurse in, and her oxygen was low. And they put her on oxygen. They end up even calling respiratory to give her a breathing treatment, and really wasn't helping too much. And the nurses, so we were transported after recovery to oncology floor. Typically, when they come out of surgery, they go to the surgery floor, but they were full. So of course, on the oncology side, they were a little concerned because they don't really deal with these kind of patients. They go to the surgery floor. So them themselves were like, I don't really know if this is normal. Her urine output wasn't what it was supposed to be either at that point. So I said, you know what? Maybe we need to call the doctor. So they called him, and finally they actually, not the actual surgeon who did it, but her partner who was on call came in, evaluated her, because I was really concerned about her breathing, and the nurses' faces looked concerned too. And I said, if you don't feel comfortable taking care of her here, I understand. Maybe she needs to go to the PICU until we can figure out what's going on. He did a chest x-ray. He said it looked clear, because I thought maybe she has fluid in her lungs. Maybe she has pneumonia now. I don't know. And come to find out, he said it's the medication. She has too much pain medication. So he says what happens sometimes, even though the pump is monitoring the amount of dose you can give every so often, he says sometimes then they get so relaxed on that pain medication that their breathing becomes labored. So he said that's what she's experiencing. He said the lungs are clear, everything's fine. Like, let's try to back her off of the hard medication that you're giving her from the pump, and we can maybe kind of do something else. So the next day she was better, but she still had to be on the oxygen. We stayed there for a week to, for her to recover. And man, I would say by day 3, they told me these kids are going to be resilient. We were expecting to see this kid just in agonizing pain, just laying there. Day 3, she was jumping on the bed, throwing herself on the bed. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, I didn't want her to hurt any of the incisions. So May 20th, we actually got out of the hospital, and they originally told us, in 2 weeks after the surgery, we're going to get the pathology back and we're going to start treatment right away. And before, I was like, treatment? Like, but you're taking the whole kidney, plus they got the whole tumor out, she said. So why do we need treatment? Like, I didn't understand that. And she said, well, we can't see, there could be other minute cells floating around. We cannot see that. So the kids need treatment to help prevent anything else growing elsewhere. So we said, okay. So she said, I'll call you next week when the pathology comes back. Okay. So meanwhile, we're recovering at home, and it's now been 2 weeks, and she's calling me and she's telling me, pathology here is really not being able to exactly pinpoint her type. It's definitely not Wilms tumor like we suspected, what we see most often. So she said, they're telling me it's between clear cell sarcoma or it's Ewing sarcoma. So she said, we need to send it out to a specialist in, I believe it was in Chicago, to this specialist who really specializes in kidney tumors in children. So we said, okay. She said, let's give it another week. And I said, okay, and waiting and nothing. And I think by June 10th, my other oncologist calls me. So she had it removed May 15th, and we're now June 10th. And we're still not started anything because we don't know what type she has and we can't start anything. So, my first thought in our mind is like, oh my God, is something else growing? Because 3-4 weeks have passed by now. And so she calls me in to come in, and she has the final pathology, and she tells me, it took so long because it's a very rare type, and she has to do all these, test after test after test. And she tells me, okay, so it's originally she told me it was stage 1 when they removed this. It's something of stage 1, which means she said if it stays stage 1 on the pathology, we don't need radiation. Great. So once she gets the final pathology back, it comes back clear cell sarcoma of the kidney, and which is extremely rare. She told me there's only about 30 to 40 cases per year in the nation. But luckily, she said there is a plan put in place by COG, which is the Children's Oncology Group. So there is already a plan in place. And she tells me, but the pathologist put it as stage 2 because it got a little bit in the renal pelvis. So we need to make sure that it's when they did the pathology as well in the ureter that connected to that left kidney, it was clean, she said, but since it got a little bit in the renal pelvis, we still have to treat it as stage 2, which requires radiation. I said, okay, great. So I told her, how many sessions of radiation do you think? She said, oh man, I'm thinking 3 or 4 weeks. And I'm like, whoa, okay. We had an appointment too with our radiation oncologist, and she told me she only needs 6 sessions, which is equivalent, to 6 days. So great, I'll take that. We then, when she had called me about the report, she said, I want to start it right away. We've already been waiting too long. So we went in. She wanted to hydrate her that first night we went in, because now we have this single kidney, right? And we need to take good care of it. And she also wanted to do another scan to make sure it wasn't anywhere else. And she told me we also had a bone scan done and an MRI of the brain. And because when they sat down with me and my husband, they told me that this cancer is very aggressive, and it's common in the kidneys, and it can also spread to the bones. It could spread to the lungs. It could spread to the brain. It's very aggressive, and this treatment that we're going to start on is very aggressive, and it's going to be hard. And we said, okay, you're kind of in a position, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you try to do something holistically on your own, well, that's really out of the question, because you don't really have a choice in children's cancer. And to be honest, I felt like, did I even want to gamble my child's life to try and see a different avenue of how to take care of this problem? So we started her on her treatment. She did well. We did 9 cycles, and she was on a cycle of 3 days of chemo, and then 1 day she needed 24 hours hydration after, because again, we were trying to protect the single kidney. And the doctor just explained to me, like, we need to take very good care of this kidney, because if we don't have a kidney, we cannot do nothing for her. So she did actually exceptionally well. Everybody was quite surprised how well she was. The whole time we were there, she never got sick. Her appetite, the only change I would say was her appetite, of course. But other than that, she never looked like a sick cancer kid that we envision when we hear somebody has cancer. These adults, they look like they're just in agonizing pain. She never had to be on pain medication. She wasn't in any kind of pain like that. Eventually, by the time we probably got, after the first treatment, for sure, the hair started coming out. Fortunately, for her age, she didn't understand that. And, I was starting to see it in her crib, and I was starting to see it on her high chair, the table. And, the nurses had told me, if you want us to do it for you, to cut her hair, we will, or you guys could do it. Or if you don't want to do anything, let it be, that's fine too. So me and my husband said, maybe we should just cut it. It's just making a mess. And, she always had these 2 fingers. She still does that soothe her to sleep, or when she doesn't feel well. And, it was getting on her hands, and she's putting it in her mouth. And So we did cut her hair or shave it ourselves, which she didn't mind that whatsoever. But my husband said, I'm going to shave my hair too. And as soon as he did, she just had this totally different demeanor. Like, where the heck is my dad? Like, she didn't recognize him. And I had talked about doing mine. And my husband said, we looked at each other, maybe we shouldn't do mine because, you know, she's really going to get scared now. So we were on, so it's every 4 weeks, you know, we're supposed to be admitted for inpatient chemo. And in between that, we were going once a week outpatient to the clinic, obviously to check counts, but she was getting vincristine, which is a very common medication. She was doing that. So she was getting one dose as well every inpatient, and then once a week outpatient for 3 months, I want to say, was the outpatient one. And then after that, it was only inpatient. We were getting that dose of vincristine, and it really, eventually, I want to say maybe 3 months into it, you could really see, you know, through her walking off balance. She couldn't run. If she did try to run, you know, she would just fall down. I would really see after she got the dose of vincristine, she would complain that her feet hurt because they say it causes neuropathy. Towards the end, you know, we were addressing the vincristine issue, and you know, everything for, unfortunately, doctors, which I know they know something about, you know, using CBD oil to help with these things, but they really don't want to say it while in the hospital. They told me, oh, we can put her on gabapentin, but I said, okay, but she's like, but it has to be every day, 3 times a day for it to actually be effective. And I said, oh, forget it. I'm not going to give her that. You know, it's just a couple days that she's a little uncomfortable. It's not all the time. And we're going into the last cycle. I said, no, I'm not going to give that to her. You know, there's a long list of medications now that she cannot have because of her kidney. So we're trying to avoid any other drugs that could damage the kidney. So we did the radiation as well. We did the 9 cycles of chemo the whole time. You know, every 3 cycles, she was getting scans. Everything was coming out clear. Eventually, for sure, the second cycle, we were transfusions, usually once a month blood transfusion. And it then eventually turned into once or twice a week platelet transfusion because it would just tank her count so much. We ended up getting into the fever stays as well. So with that, you know, I'm there for 4 days for chemo, and then I'm home for maybe 4 or 5 days, and I'm back there for a fever stay, which, you know, can last anywhere from usually a few days to a week at that point. And we ended in January 2020. She had her last treatment, and we did the end of treatment scans, and everything was clear. And we went then 3 months later to do her follow-up scans, and I just had this feeling in my gut. I told my husband when I was sitting there, because at this point, you know, backtrack a little bit. When we finished in January, COVID was starting to hit. And I remember telling my husband, like, oh man, I'm so glad we finished in the nick of time, because, you know, she's immune compromised, and, you know, we didn't know how this was going to affect immune compromised people, regardless that she was a child that they say or was really not getting it or couldn't transmit it. We went for the April, and before that, I said, you know, nobody has called me. I called the doctor. I said, nobody's called me to schedule the next scans. And the charge nurse told me, she said, you know what, they're shutting down all like procedures if they're not needed, emergent. They're shutting down all like imaging stuff if it's absolutely not necessary. She told me, I really don't know, to be honest, if you're going to get the scans like when you're supposed to in April. And I said, well, I'm not really comfortable with that. You know, like me and the doctors know, like, this is very aggressive. I said, I would like to speak with her. Tell her to please call me. So she called me, I think maybe the next day, and she told me, no, I already have her scheduled. She's going to have these scans done. And I said, okay, great. So we go in April to get these scans done. And of course, now scanxiety, as they say, kicks in. You know, we're off treatment, and, you know, and you're thinking too, like, oh, January was clear. I don't expect anything. And then we go back to the clinic. Fortunately for us, it is a large children's hospital, but we're very fortunate. If we do the scans early enough in the morning, like we go to the clinic, see our doctors for the checkup, and we also get the results same day. So I go back to the clinic with her, and at this time now with COVID, they've limited to only one parent can be with them, outpatient and inpatient wise. So I was always the one to be going with her again, because the language and things going on kind of made my husband feel a little uncomfortable if I wasn't there with him, which is very understandable for people who are not familiar with the medical field. So we're waiting and waiting in the clinic. It was just, I was waiting in the clinic, I don't know, 2-3 hours. And my husband was waiting in the parking lot for us. And he's like, nothing yet. And I said, no. I said, I don't know. Like, I feel this feeling in my stomach. Like, it's taking way too long for them to come see her. And I knocked on the window to the nurse and I told her, hey, do you know how much longer till we're going to see the doctor? We're just waiting for the results. And she tells me, oh yeah, I think the doctor, I heard her talking to the radiologist. And I said, okay. So the doctor comes out, and our original doctor who admitted us, May 13th, she comes out and she says, usually we're out in this, they have rooms also, but there's also like an open area with chairs, and they have like a little play area for the kids, and that's where we're sitting, the kids are playing. And she always has discussed like lab results, scans or whatever, like right there in the open. But then she told me, oh, can we go to a room? And that was the icing on the cake for me. I knew something was there. Did I think what she was going to tell me was there? Absolutely not. So we go to this room, and I swear to you, it's the same room she took me in when she told me the pathology reports. It was, I told my husband, I said, I never have good news in this room. And she sat me down, and it really sucked. Like, COVID sucked so much for our families. I was there by myself. I was trying to keep myself together in front of her. And she told me that she relapsed with four brain mets. And she said she was just as shocked as we were. She said, I went back and I checked those January scans, because she also had a brain MRI at the end. And she said nothing was there. It was clean. Nothing. Everything was clean. She told me that I didn't expect this relapse. It's 3 months. She just finished. Everything was clean. So I tried to keep myself together. My husband's texting me like, hey, still like nothing. And I tell her, okay, so the first thing I think of when somebody tells me brain cancer in general, or now my kid has brain cancer, what are her chances of survival now? So they didn't like re-diagnose her like, oh, it's called brain cancer now. Like, no, it's still clear cell sarcoma, and now it's just gone to the brain. And which, again, when we initially sat down, she told me it could go there. So it wasn't a complete shock, but it was a complete shock that it happened so fast. And I told her, okay, what's the game plan? And she just kind of looked at me and was like, I don't have a plan yet. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't have a plan? Like, we're, children's oncology group, they have a plan for everything. She told me, well, she said, the thing is now this is even rarer. Like, there is no plan. So she said, I'm going to get with the team at tumor board next week, and we're going to discuss the case. And she said, they work very closely with Stanford Children's. And initially too, when she was diagnosed, I asked for a second opinion too, because she was talking about this rarity. And I just need that reassurance that, yes, that is the correct diagnosis, and we're doing, the best treatment plan for her. So she said, we're also reaching out to Stanford and to see what their experience has been with this type now going to the brain, and what the plan that they've used. So we said, okay. And she said, our doctor, our radiation oncologist, she would visit the kids once a week. And she said, I think she's going to need radiation. And she said, did you want to talk to her about what her plan would be? So she came in, talked a little bit, but again, she told me herself, she said, I've never treated this type on a kid before. Like, I need to reach out to my experts and see what they have done in the past. And I said, okay. So of course I left crushed. You're telling me my kid relapsed and we don't have a plan, which is even scarier. And I also called her. She checked on me the next week, just updating me, and where they were at with Stanford and with COVID, of course. She told me, she said, I don't know if they will even see you in person, or they're just going to do a video visit. And I said, okay, that's fine. I mean, they really don't need to see her. And she told me, we're going to send all the pathology stuff so their team also can review and blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay. And I told her, I said, we'd also like an opinion from San Francisco, please. Since this now is extremely rare, I need as many experts to tell me their opinion and their thoughts and how we're going to take care of this. And they said, no problem. I have to say, the whole time, anytime I wanted a second opinion, there was never an ego. They never felt offended that I didn't trust them. It was like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, we can do that. We'll send everything that they need. Our hospital worked very closely, a lot more so with Stanford because they're a little bit closer, but with San Francisco as well. So all the teams are very familiar with each other, which was very comforting. They're like, we have these specialists on speed dial. It doesn't get lost in the shuffle like adults where it takes weeks and weeks. So I always respected them for respecting our request of wanting another opinion or another set of minds on this as well. So we had the meeting with Stanford. She is a renowned tumor specialist actually in the nation. And she told me she personally has not dealt with this type to the brain, but that it's very extremely rare. And there's only about 2 studies published in the world regarding her type to the brain, and consisting of 6 kids. And the ones that did pass were, one died of infection and one had relapsed with a different type of cancer and passed away. So she really didn't say too much. She couldn't really tell me any hard numbers to say, using this type of treatment plan, this is what kind of success rate you're going to get out of it. But she told me this regimen called ICE, that she said it's probably one of the toughest, if not the toughest regimen out there, that has been used to treat this type to the brain. And unfortunately, as the brain works, it's made so things cannot enter the brain. It's not very permeable. So there's not a lot of chemos that can penetrate the blood-brain barrier. Obviously, there is radiation. She did tell me, she said she's going to need radiation for sure. And of course, our next question is, what kind of damage is that going to cause to her cognitive function? What is that going to, is she going to be a different kid? And she then told me, I already discussed this with the team, and we're going to talk to also, you're going to have a meeting with the radiation oncologist we have here too, to hear what she has to say. And it was hard. She was very comforting, and she answered all my questions, but it was still discouraging to know that, man, my kid is extra rare, and I don't have, you want answers just plain, like, this is what we're going to do and this is the outcome. Okay. There was none of that. And also, when we talked to Stanford, they reached out to their experts in the nation as well. And so and their team gets together, comes up with a plan. So also when I talked to radiation oncologist, she told me, she will need whole brain radiation, probably 2 weeks of whole brain radiation, and she will need 2 weeks of what we call a boost to those 4 points. When my regular oncologist had told us that she relapsed, she said, I don't think surgery is on the table because it's in 4 different areas. No, it's too risky to go in and try to remove it and her not have some kind of issue afterwards. So she said, surgery would be, I'm gonna talk to surgery, but it's to neurosurgeon, but it's probably going to be like the last resort. And of course, that's what she came back and she told our doctor, like, let's try other options first before we even go in there and do something like that. Just in Stanford did give me some comfort to know that, kids can beat brain cancer. Adults are more than likely, it's almost always fatal. They cannot endure the treatment and they pretty much just continue to prolong life with radiation, she told me. But she said, so that is the good thing for your daughter, is that is very possible that we can treat this in her brain. I then had, shortly after that, I had a video message as well with San Francisco, this amazing doctor. And he had experienced her type, treating kids in the brain. And, of course, like anything else, he said, I've seen this regimen that they're talking about be successful. And I've also seen it not be successful, but it's a gamble with any type of cancer. You don't know. This is just what we've been seeing on paper that works, and sometimes it doesn't. So that really brought me comfort. And they kept telling me, with the radiation, she could have cognitive delay, nothing severe, but it could be things like maybe when she gets into school, it'll take her a little bit longer to do a math problem, something like that. So I told him, I said, well, is there anything I can do to kind of buffer that effect? And he said, just keep her mind stimulated, read to her, do activities, just keep her mind just going. And that should help buffer the side effects. So prior actually to meeting with those 2 doctors, so in April she relapsed, and it was almost a month later that we actually had a plan, started treatment. But in between then, I couldn't see these other specialists because they wanted a PET scan. And prior, she had a bone scan and MRI and CT. She has 2 private insurances, and neither one of them wanted to pay for the PET scan. My husband's insurance denied us, I think, 6 times a PET scan. And they told my doctor it was not medically necessary and that it would not change the outcome of her treatment plan. And which was baffling to my doctors, of course. And the other 2 specialists are saying, well, I cannot give you my 100% opinion on the plan. I need the PET scan. We need to know if it's anywhere else. So of course I went round and round with the insurance about that. And it was really disheartening to know that we pay you guys to help pay for our health when we need it. I pay you a lot of money. That's what you're there for. And you're going to tell my specialist that it's not necessary. Like, we know that this is so aggressive. It could be anywhere, and we could detect this at the minute level and catch it before it gets out of control. So prior to that, we had an amazing social worker when we first were diagnosed, and they come and they talk to you about things for if you need financial help, you could apply for this. You could apply for what we call here in California, it's called Medi-Cal, which is now everybody has to have insurance in California. But they told me, she said, you may not qualify because you guys make too much money. So I never, ever did the application because I told my husband, like, we're not going to get approved. Well, lo and behold, I just said, forget it. I'm just going to apply and see what happens. And we got approved because of her condition. We actually are connected with Medi-Cal, but it's called CCS. It's California Children's Services. It's meant for kids. It's a special type of insurance meant for kids with conditions like her or long-term disability, chronic conditions. And they did not wink an eye, and they approved the PET scan. If we did not have that insurance, she would not be having the PET scan. And I even asked the question, how much does this PET scan cost? I will pay out of my pocket. They said, it's going to be at least $20,000. And I thought, how in the heck am I going to come up with $20,000? And this is not going to be the last one. And I was so furious with the insurance. And I told them, literally my daughter's life is in your hands. We're going now on 3 weeks and I cannot start treatment because I don't have a plan, because you don't want to pay for this PET scan that she needs to save her life. And I honestly told them, if she dies, it's blood on your hands, because this could definitely be prevented. They're telling me she could beat this. She could beat brain cancer, but you're not allowing her to get the tests and care that she needs to proceed. And finally, of course, when the PET scan came back, it was clean. And, then the other two specialists were able to give the opinion. And so she told me, she said, we're going to do this regimen and it's pretty tough. And it's going to be 5 days of treatment, 1 day of hydration for her because of the kidney. And she told me, she said the last regimen was pretty hard and she did amazing. She said, I just don't want you to get your hopes up that she is going to be the same. Like, she's going to behave the same way. And that scared me to death, because now I thought it would be a little bit easier relapsing, because I've already done this, but it wasn't any easier. And now with COVID, I was really doing it on my own because my husband couldn't be with me. We could only switch out. It was either me or her, or me or him with her. We couldn't depend on each other, together, helping her, being by her bedside. The first go around, we both stayed with her every night. And then my husband would come back home and see my son, or sometimes my son was able to visit. Like, this was a totally different ball game, and I was scared to death. Because I was thinking the worst, like, she's going to be crying all the time. She's going to be in pain. All she's going to want is her dad. And I can't give that to her because there's only allowing one parent. And, of course, since it had gotten so, there had been almost a month, I want to say, between relapse scans and when we actually started again. She told me, I want to bring you in a day early. Let's hydrate her. And then I want to repeat the scans to see if they're the same size or if they've gotten bigger. Of course, they all almost doubled in size just within a 3-4 week span, because I'm fighting with the insurance to pay for a PET scan. And we started on treatment. All the chemo that she did have this time, she had them before, except one. And so, of course, that was the one I feared the most, because I didn't know how she was going to react to it. So we did that regimen. She did fine. And, the doctor even said, like, man, this is not even phasing her. And I said, yeah, like, are you sure you're giving her chemo? Because it seems like you're giving her sugar water. Like, she is like hyper, which I'd rather take that, right? And my nurse navigator at the time, she comes in to visit me, and she brings me the map, for her treatment. And she tells me, she had just come back from leave herself. She had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and you could just tell she wasn't ready to come back. And she had the same regimen that my daughter was on. And she told me, man, I don't know how these kids do this. She said, I still feel like a Mack truck ran over me, and look at her. And I said, I don't know how they do it either, I tell you. And she said, I just remember even driving from my house to radiation was agonizing, and I would get so sick. And when she told me that, I was like, man, this is only cycle 1. Like, she's not going to last like this for the rest of the cycles. So we then also started radiation. We did 2 weeks of whole brain radiation, which those sessions were fairly quick. They were about, literally probably took her longer to sedate her than to actually do the scans. It was less than 10 minutes. I mean, the radiation, less than 10 minutes. Then after that, we moved 2 weeks into what they called the boost. So it was like 15 minutes of radiation at each point. So 4 points. Once I finished cycle 1, I was home maybe a few days, and she already got a fever. And so, of course, you have to bring her in, and we're doing still radiation at the same time. And now she's at a point where she doesn't feel good. Usually when she would get fever, she would be pretty much in bed, not really want to do anything. And usually after a couple days of Tylenol, the antibiotic, like the fever goes away. Now we're just waiting for counts to come up. No, fever was persistent for like 2 weeks. And so I became very concerned. And now she had been developing severe diarrhea, and her stomach's upset all the time, and she's fussy. All she wants to do is sleep all day. Radiation was at 7 in the morning. They would pick us up at 6:30 and drive us there. We would come back by 9 o'clock. She was sleeping till like 4 p.m. And at that point, my husband was really just seeing her like 1 hour. She didn't really want to play. And she was actually telling me, like, Mom, I want to go to sleep. I'm tired. She was literally sleeping probably 20 to 22 hours a day. That's how well she did not feel. Plus, she just finished chemo. You add the radiation on top of it, which makes it even more tired. And this fever wouldn't go away. And the blood cultures were negative. She didn't have any bacterial going on. So we brought in an infectious disease doctor to see if it was fungal or something. They ran a bunch of viral tests, all negative. And they said, let's do a CT scan. It could be and so we did the CT the next day, and sure enough, like her intestinal area was inflamed because of the severe diarrhea. I kid you not, I literally would have to sit her on the toilet all day, and it would just keep coming out. It wouldn't stop. And at that point, before we did that, I told the doctor, I said, I really think it's the antibiotic, because last time antibiotic, she started to get worse. So we switched the antibiotic, and then she started to get much better with that. And so from then on out, we didn't ever use cefepime, which is the common one for fever. She said, let's use Zosyn. This seems to be working for her, and it's does the same thing, very similar to cefepime. So we spent that fever stay, about 20 days in the hospital. And every day the doctor would come see me, and she would always say, man, she doesn't look too bad. But she said, on paper, she doesn't look good. Like her lab results, her vitals, the blood pressure was through the roof, her heart rate, fevers were still persistent. But the day of discharge, she tells me the nurse is concerned about her blood pressure. And I had known that with a single kidney now, your chances of high blood pressure have increased. So I'm like, great. So the doctor comes and sees me, and she says, I'm going to have the nephrologist come see you because I'm concerned about the blood pressure. So I said, oh, man, now I'm not going home. I've been here for 20 days and they're not going to let me go home because of this blood pressure. So the nephrologist comes. She tells me I want to put her on medication to get this blood pressure under control. I'm like, so I can't go home? And she said, no, it's fine. She said, you just need to pick up the medicine. You need to go get this special blood pressure medicine, and then we have to see it to make sure it works. Like you're getting the same reading as what we get here to make sure it's correct. I'm like, great. Well, trying to find a cuff size for her was just like I was getting nowhere, and I thought, hell, I'm not getting out of here because I can't find this cuff for the blood pressure. So eventually I got it all squared away, and now I'm thinking, great. This is what they were talking about, where kids get on chemo and it's one thing after another of this condition, this illness happening now. Now she's on blood pressure for the rest of her life. So they told me, give it twice a day. You're going to check her blood pressure in the morning. If it's these two numbers, the top and the bottom, don't give it. And I said, okay. And then same thing in the evening, check it again. If it's too low, don't give it. So I was giving it about a month, and I was taking track of it, and the more we got into it, I was noticing I wasn't giving it as often. So I told my oncologist, hey, look at all the blood pressures I'm getting, like I haven't given it like all week. And she said, okay, let's discontinue it. So luckily till this day, she's not on any medication. She's not on blood pressure medication. I think it was just that long stay and her body going through so much just caused that blood pressure to spike, of course. So We did 2 cycles of this ice regiment, and we had completed the uh, month-long radiation, and um, we did scans again, and the 2 lesions back had shrunk by over 50%, and there was nothing else there. So it was a win-win for us. And I don't think I said, but when she sat me down and she told me, she didn't know what the plan was. My daughter is the first of her kind that they're treating. So it was kind of like, I don't want to call her a guinea pig, but in a sense it was. Like they were feeling so accomplished and proud too how well she was doing. And at the same time, like, man, we're getting onto something here. Like this is working for this kid. And so we just kept going. And of course, because she had already been so immune compromised, the fevers were already coming right away. And I was literally spending 4 or 5 days at home once I got out of chemo, and then there goes the fever again. And I was literally, now the stays are longer. Now I'm living there a minimum 2 weeks to 3 weeks a month. And it was sad because I had another child at home that I was only seeing maybe a week out of the month. And there were so many COVID restrictions. And we got to the middle of summer and it was so hot. And, it was only me and my husband who could switch out. And I told them, I said, my husband's going to come every day and see her. And, he's only there for like 3 hours, 4 hours. Could we just be with her at the same time? And they're like, no, I'm sorry, it's a policy. And I'm like, it's over 100 degrees outside and I have to go wait outside. Like, I don't just live around the corner. So I literally was sitting in my car for 3 or 4 hours, the air conditioner on, because it was so hot. The Ronald McDonald's house was closed because of COVID. Prior to that, the first bout with cancer, we never stayed there because on our unit, we were fortunate to have a couch bed, a double couch bed. And it was really prioritized to the NICU and PICU parents that didn't get to stay with their kids. But we did utilize it for laundry services, even food, because we would stay there so long. And it really, once they shut the McDonald's house down, I'm like, great, there goes my laundry service, though I had to do it myself. So that was another hurdle where I was, every so often I had to pack more clothes than normal and then send home, for my husband to do the laundry and bring it back to us. So that was another hurdle. And we used to have, for a little bit of time, my relative of mine they have about 6 RV parkings that are made for the patients. And we were using that for a little bit, but then because the McDonald's house was shut down, we could never get an RV spot anymore because a lot of these patients, especially those NICU, PICU patients, they stayed for weeks, months at a time. So when my husband when we did have an RV spot, it was nice. My husband and my son would stay in the parking lot. And when we wanted to switch or I wanted to go eat, like it was super simple. And then it got really discouraging for every admission, every scan, because of sedation, she needed to be swabbed. In July, we were going to go on our third cycle. No, she just finished the 3rd cycle and we were going to be preparing for scans. And they told me, okay, well, you need to get the COVID swab done. And, I don't remember if it was later that night or the next morning. I checked the results and it said she was detected. She was positive for COVID. And now my heart is racing because COVID is now fairly new. She's immune compromised. What is going to happen to her? Nobody has called me from the hospital to let me know she's positive. Fortunately, me and my husband were not working. We're off work. So, we weren't going to work exposing people. And I called the clinic right away to talk to the doctor. Like, is this a false positive? What is this? Like, she's acting totally normal, no fever. She's not tired, nothing. All of us are fine. Finally, the doctor calls me back and I'm not really sure who didn't notify her about it, but it was kind of just new to her. She thought infection control had already contacted me about it. And then we ended up, so I couldn't get the scans done. we were actually going to go to a different facility to get the scans done because of this backlog scheduling here was ridiculous, that they were going to put her like, I don't know, 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was not having that. So, but then once the test came back negative, positive, the other facility we were going to go to, they said, I'm sorry, we can't take her until you have a negative test. So now I'm like, great, I have this patient on treatment and I can't get the scans done because she's COVID positive. And I told my doctor, okay, I think at that point we were starting to get ready for the next round, and I told her, I'm going to stay home an extra week. We postponed the treatment. That way it will be the 14 days isolation. We then so we had to get the scans done. My oncologist pushed so hard. She said, this patient is COVID positive, but we need this scans. This is part of her treatment. Like, I don't know what you guys have to do, but she needs to get these done. So she was kind of like Imaging's first patient that was COVID positive that had to get these tests done. So the process was different. And they told me, okay, you're going to arrive here. And we'll going to be put in a different room than normal. I'm like, okay, great. Well, they knew I was coming for like a week, right? And we put the EMLA cream on the port to help with the needle, and I'm now waiting in the parking lot for. So it's an hour drive from my house. Already an hour it's been on. I'm now waiting in the parking lot for like an hour and a half, and they finally take me up, and it was just kind of disorganized, and I'm by myself, of course, and they tried 2 attempts to get her port access and they can't get it. And she's screaming in pain, and the nurses are saying something, and she tells me that she's going to start an IV. And I said, no, you're not. I said, she has a port for a reason. It's always accessed. And I said, you guys have waited way too long to access her port. She never screams in pain. I've never seen her ever in this pain before to access a port. I said, the cream is worn off. And I told them, I said, you are going to tell anesthesia that they will sedate her with the mask, and they will bring somebody in here to access her port. And unfortunately, we pretty much knew all the anesthesiologists because we had done so much scans and radiation, because radiation wasn't done at our facility. It was done at an adult facility. But they would send our anesthesiologist and our 2 nurses from the hospital to take care of the kids. So we knew all of them. And so she told me, she said, usually we don't allow parents to stay for the mask sedation, but she said, I will allow you, but just know, like, she may look different when I'm sedating her this time. Sometimes the eyes roll back and it scares parents. So I said, that's fine, whatever. And they called the oncology clinic to get somebody up to access support when she was asleep. And at that point, I'm in tears because she's in pain and this is just a freaking mess. And I'm just like, the kid's not even symptomatic, but they're acting like, it's so new to everybody that the staff is terrified themselves. And the oncology nurse comes in and she recognizes us. She's like, I'm so sorry, and once she's asleep, of course, she gets her right away. And from that point on, I was so tired emotionally because when I'm staying there by myself, I have to wake up every 2 hours to change her diaper because she cannot keep up with the fluids that are being given to her. If I go over 1-2 minutes of 2 hours, she's literally, peeing everywhere, and I have to change the linens, and it's just a whole thing. And the swabbing was just abundance of swabbing. Every time you go into the ER, it's a swab. For admission, it's a swab. For a scan, it's a swab. It doesn't matter if I was already admitted 3 days ago, now she needs a scan, we have to swab her again. And for that one where she was COVID positive, they told me that they were going to intubate her. And I was furious about that as well. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, she has a port. Why don't we doing it the same way? Apparently that was CDC recommendation or whatever it was, that with COVID positive patients, for extra precautions for the staff, she had to be intubated. no kid wants their child, or no parent wants their kid intubated unless it's for life-threatening reasons, you know. So that was another, you know, just icing on the cake. And then they told me, so she's going through treatment fine, everything's going good, just the fevers were really rough for her. Then probably like September, they told me, or August, September, my doctor told me, hey, so we just got word that she doesn't need to be tested anymore for COVID. From the day you're positive, it's a 90-day period where they say you don't need to be swabbed anymore. And I said, okay, great. And of course, what happens that same day I go home from clinic, I end up with a fever and I'm back on the road to the hospital. And I had gone on several occasions where I just know in my heart she's going to spike that fever in the clinic, and not till I get home she spikes it. And so we went again round and round with staff. They were trying to swab her, and I'm like, no, like my doctor said, no, we don't need to do this. And now I'm so far into this, like you cannot pull the wool over my eyes. You know, I know all the ins and outs as much as you do, and I practically live here. So, and then I was starting to get to the point I caught myself where I was getting very agitated with not my regular staff, but you know, the other staff that wasn't too familiar with us. And I one day I apologized to my doctor and I told her I'm really sorry for letting the resident have it the day before, because they didn't know the policy had changed. But it's frustrating that these people making the policies are putting our kids in the same category as a non-immune compromised child who comes in with a fever. Like, she has fever because she's neutropenic. The counts are 0. And if she has COVID, she got it from here. She hasn't gone anywhere else. So, you know, COVID played a huge, the moral of my story on this is just that COVID played a different ball game in this treatment than when we were on treatment before and there was no COVID. And I had my support person the whole time, anytime I needed him. And now you throw these families into this chaotic situation, and even new diagnoses. They told me the parents get, I think, 24, 48 hours together, initially diagnosed, and then there's no longer 2 parents at a time. And I told my husband, do you remember the day that we were told what she had going on and how long it took us to process what was going on? Like, that's insane. So of course I went round and round with that. And she also, platelets were always an issue for her. I actually counted to the other day, she had a total of 35 transfusions just this last bout, which I'm gonna guess was about in the 30 ballpark the first bout, because we were in the clinic at least 2 to 3 times a week for platelet transfusion. And we got to a point with COVID, there was a huge shortage, and there was a few times where they told me there was no platelets available for her, and the blood bank was searching high and low in our area, out of area, to get platelets for her. And one time it took 2 to 3 days, they told me, till they could get a donor and donate. And it was scary. I was thinking, man, if my kid takes a fall, she could bleed to death. Her platelets got, the lowest it's ever gotten was 2. Like that's nothing. The blood, the RBCs was like usually once a month, or if she had fever, it could be a couple times a month. And little behold, I keep telling my husband, he never had gotten his blood donated before, and I told him, you need to go get tested. Maybe you're her blood type, because I was not a match for her. Well, we never did it. Come to find out, his first blood donation, they're the exact same match. So the whole time he could have been my donor for platelets. And with platelets, is nice, you know, you can donate every 2 weeks, versus, you know, blood, you have to wait 8. But now we know. So we, our journey ended October of 2020. And when we finished, when she had scans in September, actually, and she had a couple lung nodules, and we didn't know what they were. And they're like, they're too small to go in a biopsy. We're just going to watch them. And when we did the next scans and September, or it was December, like the nodules were completely gone, which was great, because that was another thought, like, great, we already know this can go to the lungs. Now it's in her lungs. She also had a little spot like down by her stomach that had seen on the PET scan actually, and that was completely resolved as well. So now when we finished in October, they kept her really on a tight leash. They're like, okay, usually we do every 3 months. We're going to do every 2 months right now. So we were going every 2 months, and then we had the scans in March. Yeah, March. And she said, well, actually prior to that, back up. This regimen, they told me she can get a max of 6 cycles. There, we don't really know the magic number of what's going to be the cure here. So by cycle 5, the fever was getting really hard to overcome, and she wasn't behaving herself. And I remember having this conversation with her, the main one, from day one. And I told her, I'm really concerned. And she's never really heard me say that. And I said, do you think that she can handle another round of treatment? I said, it's taking us a long time to recover. We're now going almost 5, almost 6 weeks till we can start another round of treatment, because it's taking her too long to recover. And she told me, I'm going to be honest, I don't know. And she said she's had plenty of radiation. She's had plenty of chemo. She told me, if you want to stop, I'm supporting you. And she said, I don't think anybody can tell you either way which is the right decision. You know her best. And if I knew cycle 6 was going to be the magic number, I would say, let's try and push for it. But she said, I don't even know what cycle 4 has done or cycle 5 has done, to be honest. If it's have we done more harm than good? So she said, you and your husband, you guys talk about it. And then when we're going to get ready for the next cycle, like, you let me know. So that oncologist, she doesn't have children, but she was always so compassionate. And my other oncologist, they did have kids. And the next time I seen the one that did have children in the clinic, I told her, I've been praying so hard on this. And I told her, I need you to shoot it straight to me. I need your mom opinion, what you would do if you were in my shoes, because I don't want to feel any guilt. I don't want to feel, I felt like if I stopped, I was throwing in the towel and I was failing her. And she said, to be honest, I think her chances of a fatal infection are much higher than the benefit of doing another round of chemo. She's now getting almost out to 6 weeks in between cycles. And the longer you get out of the regimen cycle, the less effective the chemo is. So she said, if I were you, I would stop. I'm not willing to risk her life and us not have any hard evidence to tell you that this is what she needs. And I promise you, this is going to be the end of the road of your cancer journey. So I told her, okay, I'm going to talk to my husband and, I'll let you know. So finally we talked about it and we said, okay, like, we're done. Like, I don't want to do cycle 6. I don't think she can handle it, as they agreed. And they were all in a unanimous decision. Like, yeah, that's the best decision for her. And the fact of the matter is, my husband told me, I just don't want to have this guilt, like, if she relapses, like, man, what if I did cycle 6? It's a constant thought in our mind. Like, what if I did this? What if I did that? Would the outcome be better? Would she have been cured forever? Would she not have relapsed? And he told me, he said, she's going to relapse. She's going to relapse regardless. Doesn't matter if we did, because the cycle or the treatment plan was a minimum of 4 cycles, but a max of 6. And and it's true. We completed the first regimen, 9 cycles of chemo, and 3 months later she relapses. Like, what? The brain was off chemo for 3 months and she relapses. So now we're 10 months. off treatment. Um, it's weird, you know. I told my husband when the counts look extremely well, like normal, I'm like, when is the last time we see numbers like this? Like the ANC 4500, like we get excited about seeing lab numbers, blood numbers on our kid. Like it's weird to me. Like that's not something I should be looking forward to seeing. And thus far, you know, she's thriving. Like they always tell me, like she's literally thriving off chemo. Her weight kind of went up and down, um, but never anything drastic. Never needed feeding tube, nothing like that. Um, but yeah, she's doing great. And cognitive wise, she hasn't skipped a beat. She is so sharp. And they're impressed and inspired by her every single time they see her. And it's at first, and this is weird, like it was weird not to go to the clinic weekly, and she was so used to it. When we stopped going, we didn't have to go anymore. She would tell me for months, Mom, do I have to go to the doctor today? Do I have to go to the doctor? Like that's what she was used to. That was her life. She had never been anywhere since she was 16 months old. All she knew was home and hospital. Like what kind of life is that for a kid, you know? And so fortunately, you know, she really wasn't missing out because she didn't know any better. But it was a weird adjustment for me. And I told my team, I said, you know, I'm really gonna miss you guys. Like, I don't know if that's weird, but like we just get to know each other on such a personal level. And people don't know this, but kids are diagnosed, hundreds of kids are diagnosed every day. And I would see a good handful of new diagnoses every single time I was in the clinic. And all the parents have the same look on their face, like a deer in headlights. And you just think about, like, that was what I looked like when I first was here. And what are these parents doing, sitting around talking to each other, and the kids are playing like it's a play date? Like, what is this? And it was a huge adjustment for me to get used to not going to the clinic anymore. And now it's a little bit more normalized. And we're trying to do more things now because, and with experience, it's been, we really truly live like tomorrow is not promised, because I don't know if she's going to relapse or not. Like we live in this constant fear of, is she okay? If she starts complaining about a single ache or pain, it's the worst already. It's not like, oh, it's just a bruise. It's already the worst. If my son complains of an ache or pain, oh, you're fine, because he's not the one who's been through it. And you know, at that age, she's 3 now. Do they fully understand to explain to me where the pain is coming from? I can say, is it your knee? And she's going to agree to me, you know? So it's still a fearful stage for me to know when she does have pain, is it truly like a pain, or it's just like I fell down, you know, and I'm fine. But she's doing great so far. And now we're every 3 months. Actually, last week, Wednesday, she finally got her Metaport removed, which they don't usually leave it that long, but they trusted me. They said, I know if she gets a fever, you're going to bring her, which is sad to hear that there are some parents that don't do it, you know, even though they're off treatment. And so that was a huge milestone for me. And people kept asking me, how do you guys feel about it? It has to be exciting, right? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm so attached to this thing, even though it's attached to my daughter, literally. It's been such a breeze. It's always been there for us. It's been successful and never failed us. It always worked and never bothered her. It was so easy. We didn't have to keep poking her for every single thing. And, you know, to put her to sleep, you know, was just used to the routine. And fortunately, the things are kind of lessening up on their policy, where my husband got to go with me into, you know, for the surgery inside. Though once we got to like the pre-op room, wasn't able to. And I kind of had a little breakdown moment when I saw one of our anesthesiologists that was treating her at the radiation facility, because I hadn't seen him since then. And it was just this sense of relief that came over me, that I know somebody is with her that's going to take care of her. You know, the surgeon I was getting this time, my old surgeon who originally did the port placement left. So I didn't know this new surgeon, and I didn't know the OR nurses, but it brought me comfort that I knew the anesthesiologist, she knew him, and I knew she was going to be taken care of. And he even gave her a gift when she completed radiation. You know, him and his wife gave her a gift, and I thought, man, like this man, he loves his job, and he loves seeing these kids. Um, so that was my breakdown moment, and it was just a bunch of mixed feelings. And she did great through it all. She never till this day has she had pain or anything. Um, so I really, at this point, we couldn't ask for anything more. You know, though our journey wasn't as a lot of scary moments, except the one time where, you know, we didn't know what was going on with her. I was so very blessed that she was able to take the treatment like it was not phasing her one bit whatsoever. A little bit of nausea when I would bring her home, and that was it. But it still doesn't sit comfortable with me that she's full of poison, in a sense, you know. And now we fear for and looking for um, what issues now are going to arise from being on essentially a year and a half of chemo and over a month of radiation, which also in turn, you get chemo or you get radiation, can also cause cancer.
Right, yeah. And I mean, you're talking about all these side effects that can happen. People say, okay, your journey's done or you're done with this part. No, you're never going to really be done. And last season, I had a guest on one of the episodes here, Tay, and she's 31 right now, and she's a survivor herself, and she's still dealing with issues from the radiation and everything that she had. So it's something that you truly never really get rid of or finish with. And a lot of things that that you were talking about. Really kind of hit home, number one, and number two is a lot of things that people do not know about. These kids, like her, she was at 16 months, that was her life, and that's what a lot of these kids know. They think that that's normal for them, to be at the hospital, to go through treatment, to go through this, to go through that. I had a parent also in the last season that their son was asking their siblings, when you were in the hospital, did you have to go through this? Because they think that every child goes through that because they're in that, they're in that situation, and that is their life. And unfortunately, they don't get to get the benefits that all these other kids are having, even school, going to school, something like that, so simple. And then you also mentioned something, saying you wish you can have answers when something happens like this. We are brand new to this. And even you and I, having a medical background, as we were speaking off camera, we know more than we need to, but we don't know enough. So when this situation happens, we wish we could have those answers, okay, this is what's going to happen and this is what we're going to do. And as I was mentioning before we started the story, 4%. So our children only get 4% of funding for cancer, which means that only 4 pennies on the dollar are going for childhood cancer research. And that is why we are in the situation that when we are diagnosed, they don't know what to do, or they don't have as many options because they think it's rare. The government says it's rare, so we're only getting 4 pennies on the dollar. But our children are having to go through this, and like you said, having all this poison inside of them, because and most of the chemos, if not all of the chemos, are adult chemos, just at a lower dose, because again, they haven't done anything for childhood cancer for doing that. But I love hearing these stories, and I know the PTSD is always going to be there for you and for your husband. And like you said, if she has a fever, if she hits her, even her hand, and she says that she's hurting, those triggers pop up and start popping up. Okay, well, what if it's this? What if it's that? What if her counts are not good? What if she's bleeding internally? And that is one thing that we're always going to go through, and that's something that you're going to always go through as well. And people need to see that, how much this has affected our way of living now. And especially having gone through this, and having gone through this during the whole COVID, when the pandemic was bad. I mean, I can't even imagine, just being there by yourself, and switching off with your husband back and forth. But we're glad. I mean, so happy to hear that she is doing well now. And I tell you, Ashley, I'm gonna continue praying for her, that she continues to be this way, and that the what God started in her, He's gonna finish fully. And that she will be one of these testimonies that you and her can go into, and sit with parents and say, this is what we went through, but let me tell you, this is where my daughter is now, and let me tell you that there is hope. That if you just cling onto God and to His promises and keep your faith, that this can happen. So we continue to pray that the miracle finishes 100%, and that God does this miracle also. Ashley, do you guys have any like social media pages or anything that has her, well, I mean, her journey of what she went through or what she currently has? And I know that you also now, and I thank you for the opportunity of sharing your story, because I know just recently you started, and I don't know how many platforms you have shared it with, but thank you for going this much in detail. It's really an honor for me to share her story. But is there any plans that you have, going forward, as far as being an advocate for childhood cancer? Is there any plans that you're doing right now, or anything that you have on the table?
Um, I have, now that technically the journey is done of treatment, but um, n- now I just feel this overwhelmingness feeling of I need to give back like tenfold. And I tell my doctors all the time in the team, I'm like, I owe you guys everything. Like, I'm not done with you guys. Like, somehow or another, I'm going to give back to you guys. Because really, without them, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm at. So of course, like with COVID, things have gotten a little weird. And we had always said, I told my husband, when we get out of here and she does better, we're going to go to the McDonald's house and we're going to make a meal for families. And so that's one of our goals right now. I know they're just, you can do a monetary donation online and they will provide the meals to families. Um, our other thing, I paired up with another mom I met, and we're doing raising money right now for campaign One at a Time, which is helping raise money to grant kids' wishes, whether it's end of life, or they've already fought their battle, or other kinds of illnesses. So that was kind of my stepping stone to see. I didn't know where to start. There's so many campaigns, like which is the best one to get on. So this was kind of my platform to start on that. And then we also have something at our hospital where she was treated. On our specific floor, they have what it's called a sweet eats kitchen, and it's just a kitchen for our families that is fully stocked with food in the refrigerator, in the freezer, snack food, drinks, microwave, toaster, pretty much anything, to help these families get through, just to get a bite to eat, which people don't realize. Sometimes you hardly get a chance to use the restroom because your kid doesn't want you to leave or go get something to eat. There was many times, especially with COVID, since I was by myself, I'm like, how do you guys want me to eat? They were serving the parents breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's only 3 meals. What about I need a snack, just to say. I mean, and it wasn't what you wanted to eat. So this kitchen was amazing, and businesses would donate to like cupcakes, or for Thanksgiving or Christmas, somebody would always make like a big feast. And so another thing we wanted to do was you can either go do all the shopping yourself and stock the kitchen, or give money. This kitchen was set up in honor of a family who lost their son to cancer, and they created this kitchen for the families to always have some kind of meal, hot or a snack or something, because people don't realize the financial burden. And fortunately, me and my husband were very, very fortunate where we didn't lose our jobs, use our, our regular pay that was coming in, versus some families that are getting cut down to, one income or no income. They don't know how they're gonna pay their bill tomorrow or buy their next meal. So that's one other thing we wanted to start doing for sure. And I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I kept telling my husband, but we're gonna give back tenfold somehow. And also, there was another organization that we met called the Sweet Nectar Society, and they are a nonprofit organization, and they do photography for families. A lot of them are our kids. A lot of them are their end of life kids. You know, could be some other kind of condition. And they do professional photography. I remember my husband came to me and they said, "Hey, you know, the Child Life lady said there's this organization, and the ABC 30 News is coming, and they're going to be doing a piece on her about what she does." And it's the staff that nominates really the kids for these, and the staff nominated us to get her pictures done and interview us and stuff. And I'm like, I just got admitted for a fever state, so I was no way prepared. No clothes. I barely had the clothes that I was wearing. And then she comes in and she tells me, you know, would you guys like to do this? And I'm like, I don't have any clothes for her. Like, you don't worry about it. What size does she wear? And I'm like, I tell her the size, and she says, okay. She said, don't worry. This organization provides
Uh,
brand new outfits for the kids. They go out and they buy the clothes if they don't already have them, and you get to keep them. I'm like, really? She next day she comes back, brings me 2 outfits to pick out. And I have these beautiful photos. Like, I can't thank her enough, really. So they did an interview with my husband actually, and I think I still have the news clip, to be honest. But um, things like that, because when she did the pictures, I thought, man, this could be the last pictures. I don't even have any family pictures because everything since she was born, you know, she was a January baby. So I was that parent. I didn't let her go anywhere unless it was a doctor if needed. And then bam, I'm like, okay, she's getting older. We can start doing stuff. And she gets diagnosed with cancer. So we never had a bunch of family pictures. So when she rang her bell for the first round of chemo, I asked them, you know, if they could come and take her pictures too. And they said, yeah, absolutely. And I said, okay, what's the cost? You know, and she said, oh, nothing. Like, this is our gift. This is what we do. And these are professional photos that I would pay hundreds of dollars for. And they give you a photo book. They give me a big canvas too. So this organization is, and with COVID, it really hit them, and they weren't allowing them to come in and do these photos for these families that were losing their children. So I did hear that there was a couple doctors that said, you know, I'll take the pictures for you. And you guys just edit them. And so they kind of did a little bit of something like that. But these families need these pictures. And I can't imagine how they feel taking pictures of a child of end of life. Like, what is she feeling or seeing behind the lens? You know, so on that organization too, like, I'm just giving back tenfold. And people can donate either to sponsor a child to have the shoot done, or sponsor, you know, their to be able to provide the photo book or the canvas print. So those are pretty much the only things so far that we've been doing so far. But now, you know, the more that we get post treatment, I'm feeling more and more hopeful that we're going to still continue on the right path, of course. But now I tell my husband, like, it's our job now. Our journey is done, but it is now our job to continue advocating for our next door neighbors' kids or whoever. Like, there is going to be another person exactly in my shoes, and it's our job to continue advocating. And what is being provided for our kids to help them and cure them is not acceptable.
no, not at all. Not at all. I totally agree with you. And there are great organizations such as that. I mean, you mentioned it, and I saw that so much. And luckily, me and my Mia's mom, we were also blessed, but there was a lot of families that did not have, money to eat. So, to be able to have a meal like this, and places like the Ronald McDonald House are a blessing. And that's why now, with my organization and a brotherhood that I'm a part of, we go to the Ronald McDonald House here locally and to the one in Fort Worth, which is where we were for the 10 months right before Mia passed. And make sure you send me the information of that organization that takes the pictures. I would really want to put him out here as well. And then you did mention the campaign one at a time. I'm actually very, very good friends with Brody. Brody and I have been friends for a while. We're very good friends, and we're actually working on a couple of things together. So he is doing amazing work at that campaign one at a time. I will put his link in the description here, and he is doing a lot more than a lot of these big name companies are doing. And Brody himself did not go through it or did not have a child go through it. He went through it because of a neighbor, and that's how he started. And God has blessed him and put him in the position that he's at right now. So, to Brody, thank you so much for what you do for these children. And like I said, he's a very good friend of mine. So I'll also be tagging him and putting his information here. So Ashley, thank you so much. Right before we leave, I do have two questions that I ask parents that are on my show. And if you've seen them, you know what questions they are. So but I'm going to ask you, what advice would you give to other parents that are going through the same situation that you are? It's a little bit different because, we have parents that have lost children and they give advice, but parents that are going through the same situation that you are right now, what advice would you give them? And what advice would you give a parent with perfectly healthy children?
Man, my advice for parents that are still fighting, or they're just finishing the journey, um just keep onto your faith. I tell you, I never was so close to my faith until this second bout. I literally seen the Lord do a miracle on my daughter. I don't know how he did it, but he did. um and though we're 10 months out, you would think I wouldn't get this emotional about telling her story, but we are it's something so traumatic. Like, it's definitely how do you say, burnt in my mind, every single thing that has happened. And I would just say, just to keep pushing forward and keep on your faith, and really have a strong relationship with your team, man. If something happened to me and I had to leave my daughter with somebody, in a second I would leave them with my doctors, and I would know that she would be in great care. Anytime I had a question, they would ask, please ask the questions, because there's so many parents and families that they just say, yes, okay, that's the plan, yes, okay, and they're not, but they're thinking in the back of their mind, like, I don't think that's right. Like, advocate, that's what you're there for. Don't just agree. If you don't understand what they're saying, ask the question, can you please explain it to me differently? And I promise you, they will respect you for that. I just had a case where before we had the port out, she got a fever, had to go through the whole thing, because she has the port. And they said, the oncologist told the ER doctor, she said you could go home, or if you want us to stay and watch her a day, that's fine. But she says that she fully trusts you, and she knows that if if she starts really not going the right direction, or she gets a fever again, that she knows in her heart you're going to bring her back. Like, they have so much trust and respect in me because we have built that relationship, and they know that I'm not afraid to ask the hard questions and don't sugarcoat it. And make sure that that team is being very transparent, because this is your child's life that's in their hands. And if you feel like they're not doing the best thing, then boy, you better find another place, or say, you need to say, this is not working. Just like when she had that antibiotic was not working, and I said, I really think it's the antibiotic, and sure enough, it was. She was very sensitive to that one, and she listened to me. It was great to know that I had a team on my side, that anytime I needed something, they were there to listen, and they wouldn't just come in and say, okay, her counts look like this, and this is the plan for the day. No, it was real interaction. How is your son? How is your husband? How is everybody doing? Oh, did you guys end up having a party for your son? Wanting to actually play with her, not just come in and assess her and leave, and I have to go see another kid. So for me, I would just say, you need to have a really strong relationship with your team and faith, and that will, for me, it brought extreme comfort to know that I trusted my doctors 1000%, and the nurses. They were amazing. They were amazing. And for kids, or for parents that have healthy kids, man, count your blessings, because guess what? Both my kids, they were born healthy, nothing wrong with them, nothing. And my daughter, I had asked them, like, do you think she was born with this tumor? And then over time, it just got larger. And when she was born, maybe a few days later, she got something on her back called a hemangioma. It looks kind of like a red splotchiness, and it's kind of raised. And I thought maybe that kind of triggered it, but they told me no, that they don't think she was born with it, and it's just kind of something. Her case is where when the cells are replicating, that they just kind of got out of control, and that's the unfortunate part about childhood cancer is a lot of the cases are not environmental or food that you're eating, like adult cancers. A lot of them, they don't know why the kids are getting it.
Right.
And when we were originally diagnosed, my oncologist told me, she said, the scary part is we're seeing a lot of more of the rare types in the area. So it makes you think, like, what is going on? That the kids are popping up left and right. And with COVID, they were flooded with new patients because people were prolonging the healthcare, and they were scared to go out. So if with a healthy child, I would just say count your blessings. And if you ever have one single doubt or concern, keep pushing it, and don't let this COVID scare you, because it's scary to see now what these doctors are dealing with, some really sick kids, because parents or the doctors were not being proactive for them. And I had another case where my son, he had something wrong with his leg, and my pediatrician, God bless his soul, I will be so ever grateful for him, for him to have sent her out right away to a specialist, didn't try to figure it out himself, to get her the care she needed. And now when it comes to him, like, he is very, he does not just let things brush by, like, oh, he's growing pains or whatever. No, like, you know what, let's just get an image just to make sure, because I think he's a little bit more proactive because of her. But definitely count your blessings, I tell you, because I'm so grateful. I thought too, this could be something genetic. Do I have to get my son now tested? And she told me no, like, it's not going to be genetic. It's not going to be something she can pass it on to her children. And unfortunately, because of her age, she shouldn't have fertility issues, which we don't know that, right? But yeah, count your blessings. That's the number one thing. I never in my mind did I ever think I would be this parent. And I think every parent thinks that stuff doesn't happen to me. It's not going to happen to my kids.
Right. Yeah. Don't take anything for granted. That's for sure. And yeah, you're right. I mean, how many times did we not see that commercial on TV and see these bald little kids walking down a hall, tied to an IV pole, and we never thought that that would be us, and that was us,
Yep.
and that's the life we lived, and a lot of parents are going through it right now. Well, Ashley, thank you so much. Thank you, really, and we continue to pray for little Warrior Katalayah. I know that God's going to finish what He started with her, and again, it's going to be a success story, and definitely a testimony that her and you and your husband are going to have for years. So, thank you so much for opening up your heart and really sharing. That to me is an honor. And you and your husband are a part of this Gold Corner family now. Again, it's a broken family, but we're broken together, right? And as long as we can
Right.
be broken together, there's nothing that can stop us from advocating for our children and for these children that are going to be diagnosed. So thank you once again, Ashley. And I want to thank all our viewers that tune in for today. You are going to have the description of these organizations that we talked about here in the description. I'm sorry, the links here in the description. Thank you so much for joining us again. This is the reality of childhood cancer. This is what our children have to go through, and what our children are going to continue to go through, and unless we do something about it. But we're here. We're going to advocate, and I tell people, even if it costs me my life, I'm always going to be a voice for these children. Thank you so much for joining us this week. As Ashley mentioned, and as I always sign off, I say, live each day to its fullest, because tomorrow's not promised. Really live in the moment and thank God for your blessings right now. And just hold on a little while longer, because we're almost home. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.